Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Amritpal Singh. Coming up in the next 1 hour, India's Prime Minister meets Ukrainian President Zelenskiy in Kyiv. This is the first ever visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine. India celebrates the first National Space Day on August 23rd to commemorate the moon landing last year. The theme is touching lives while touching the moon. The Pentagon says military-to-military relationship between New Delhi and the United States is strong. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is set to meet US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin in the United States. President of Congo allows the first disbursement of $10 million to fight the country's Mpox outbreak. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Ukraine's capital Kyiv on a day-long visit to Ukraine. The Prime Minister arrived in Kyiv from Poland on board Rail Force 1 train in the second and the final leg of his two-nation trip. Prime Minister Modi is the first ever Indian Prime Minister to visit Ukraine since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Prime Minister received a warm welcome by the Indian community upon his arrival. Prime Minister Modi is visiting Ukraine at the invitation of President Volodymyr Zelensky. And Prime Minister Modi paid floral tributes to Mahatma Gandhi at the Gandhi statue. The Prime Minister's visit to Ukraine comes nearly 6 weeks after his high-profile visit to Moscow. Prime Minister has made a strong appeal for peace. So the Prime Minister, along with his delegation at Kyiv, these are visuals that we are showing to you where the Prime Minister signed a visitor's book when the two leaders met upon his arrival at Kyiv. He met the Ukrainian President at the Mariinsky Palace in Kyiv. Both leaders held talks on a range of aspects of the bilateral ties, including political, trade, economic, investments, education, cultural, people-to-people exchanges, and others. So you can see, of course, the two leaders interacting with their delegations. They held one-on-one talks. First, that's Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky, and later held delegation-level talks at the Mariinsky Palace in Kyiv. When Prime Minister arrived, a warm embrace between the two leaders. From the Indian side, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, the National Security Advisors Ajit Doval, Foreign Secretary Mistry were present as were part of the delegation of Prime Minister Modi. So, extensive talks covering the entire gamut of bilateral relations, reviewing the progress made in the bilateral relations, the need for taking it further and expanding the scope of the bilateral relations was on the table between the two sides. A list of agreements were also signed between the two sides. We'll get to know in a little while what documents were signed between the two leaders after the delegation level talks. But the Prime Minister also on his arrival met the small Indian community that is in Kyiv, though there was a 20,000 strong presence of Indians in Ukraine before the start of the war, of which the students formed a sizable part. Mostly students studying medicine in Ukraine, but after the war India evacuated its nationals and students studying there under Operation Ganga. So the two sides reviewed how the relationship can be brought back on track, be it on people-to-people contacts, or be it on cooperation on diverse fields, be it on trade, economy, the political aspect of the relationship, and of course the war, the Russia-Ukraine war was extensively discussed, where Prime Minister is said to have stressed on the need for peace and taking urgent steps to stop the war and find a lasting and a peaceful solution to the war through dialogue and diplomacy. I'm joined by my colleague Jessica Taneja, who joins us more on the story. Jessica, first of all, give us, let me begin by asking you about the significance of this visit, a short visit, not even a full day, a few hours, 7 hours. For a visit of 7 hours, the Prime Minister takes an artist's journey on the train of about 10 hours. So what is the messaging that he's trying to send from there?
Well, the messaging is clear, and the messaging, of course, goes much beyond the assumed idea that this is a balancing act for India. Well, India had previously as well stated that its interest in facilitating peace for the region was something that it was looking forward to, and this visit achieves much more than that. And as you pointed out, a 10-hour journey, but only a 7-hour stay in Ukraine. But from the morning, the engagements that you've seen the Prime Minister has held, from paying tribute to Mahatma Gandhi to going to the memorial of martyred children, there has been quite a packed schedule, preferably giving out the message that yes, Ukraine is important, even though Russia is its time-tested friend. But in achieving that goal, where it goes out and it extends its reach to countries and continues to diversify its ties, I think is a testament. This visit stands as a testament to that.
Okay. What is the significance of visiting this, Martyrology museum that he visited? That was the first thing he did with President Zelenskiy. What was he trying? What was the appeal that he was trying to put out from there?
Well, that particularly that war memorial of the martyred children during the invasion or the military preoccupation of Russian forces in Ukraine back in November 2022. So of course that was a point of significance as well. And as you recall, 6 weeks ago when the Prime Minister was in Russia meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, Russian missiles had bombed a hospital in Ukraine. So of course, given the significance of how it has all evolved since then and how young innocent children lost their lives, India has put its focus particularly on how humanitarian assistance can be provided. And let's not forget, since the war has raged, India has provided 14, in fact, India has sent 14 consignments of aid, be it medicines or tents, and even in a case where it sent generators for schools in Lviv region for the children to be able to continue their education. So, of course, the significance there quite paramount in a sense where India believes that a peaceful resolution is the only way out.
Okay, let's talk about the bilateral aspect of the relationship. What all could have come up for discussion? What all areas the two sides felt that the relationship could be expanded?
Well, we are expecting the outcomes to be given soon. We're expecting a press briefing from the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, in a short while, and perhaps there'll be more details as to what were the key highlights of the discussions between the two. But when it comes to the mutual areas of cooperation in terms of trade, we could look at particularly in the agriculture sector, and also, of course, India exporting medicines in the pharmaceutical sector that has seen the trade between the two in the past as well. Of course, in the pre-pandemic times, you'd recall that the import of sunflower oil as well from Ukraine. But let's not forget that the crisis that was created when the conflict began back in February 2022, and as the war rages, the export of crucial grains, wheat and corn were halted and perhaps disrupting supply chains. And while Russia and Ukraine both being an important player in export of both corn and wheat, certainly created a disruption of sorts. A point where India's diplomacy could help perhaps ease that tension could in a way be explored. But of course, strengthening of the trade ties between the two could see an uptick, as this visit would signify.
Okay, people-to-people contacts, a large. All right, this is the press conference coming live, where External Affairs Minister is expected is going to brief the press on what really transpired today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Kyiv this morning, and we've just concluded his official engagements. This is a landmark visit. It's the first time that an Indian Prime Minister has visited Ukraine since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1992. Now, the Prime Minister arrived by a special train in the morning, and he was received by First Deputy Foreign Minister, Mr. Andrei Sibiha, at the Kyiv railway station. He arrived here in the hotel. He met the Indian community. He then started his engagements with a visit to the multimedia exposition on children who have lost their lives in this conflict. He was accompanied to the museum by President Zelenskiy. The Prime Minister placed a toy in the museum in memory of the children. He thereafter went to the A.V. Fomin Botanical Gardens to pay homage to Mahatma Gandhi, whose statue is there. In fact, his last engagement is going on right now, which is that he's meeting Ukrainian students who are studying Hindi. Now, in terms of the official discussions, I should say that he held these with President Zelenskiy. This happens to be their fourth meeting. They had met initially in Glasgow in November of 2021, then in Hiroshima in May of 2023, and then most recently in Puglia in Italy in June of 2024. They've also had 7 teleconversations. In the discussion, obviously, a significant part of it was devoted to our bilateral relations. There was a discussion about trade, economic issues, defense, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, education. There were a whole lot of issues. You will see much of that reflected in the joint statement, which has been released already, or will be released very shortly. The leaders also, I must share with you, tasked the Intergovernmental Commission, of which Minister Kuleba and I are the co-chairs, to specifically focus on rebuilding our trade and economic relations, which had gone down in recent times. We certainly look forward to having early meeting of that body, definitely by the end of this year. While this is the first visit, I think you all appreciate that there is a very clear context in which the visit is taking place. Obviously, much of the discussion was spent with regard to the war in Ukraine. So before I come to exactly what was discussed, I just want to give a little bit of background here, which is that there have been a number of public positions taken by India and by the Prime Minister on this subject. A little more than 2 years ago, he had actually publicly said that this is not an era of war. He had also underlined that dialogue and diplomacy are the key. Most recently, he emphasized that the solution will not come out of the battlefield. And obviously, we find the civilian and humanitarian toll of this conflict particularly distressing. It's also India's view that the two sides need to engage each other to find a solution. Now, I also want to, I'll come to the joint statement, but there's a particular segment in the joint statement which pertains to the conflict. So let me read that out, which is that the Prime Minister reiterated the need for sincere and practical engagement between all stakeholders to develop innovative solutions that will have broad acceptability and contribute towards early restoration of peace. He reiterated India's willingness to contribute in all possible ways to facilitate an early return of peace. Now, while I read that part out from the joint statement, again, just to refresh your memory, or for those of you who may not be entirely aware of it, I would like to remind you that in the past, India has actually been actively associated with various efforts led by various countries in this regard. We supported the Turkish effort in 2022 to open up the Black Sea grain corridor. In September 2022 also, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal actually took up with us the concerns regarding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant at that time. It was a matter on which we had been thereafter directly in touch with the Russians, and then back to the Ukrainian side, also been in touch with IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi. And at various other points of time, we had also taken public positions cautioning against the danger of escalation. Now, let me now come to today's discussion on this particular subject, because I would say in terms of the time which the Prime Minister and President Zelensky spent, most of it actually was in regard to the conflict. So here, the Prime Minister spoke about our position, which I have summed up for you, that there's not an era of war, that dialogue and diplomacy are key, so the solution will not come out of the battlefield. He shared the widespread sentiment in the global south about the repercussions of this conflict for them. He spoke also about his discussions recently with President Putin in Moscow. The Prime Minister, if you remember, was there in July. He sought President Zelenskyy's assessment of both of the ground situation as well as the diplomatic scenario. President Zelensky spoke at some length on both issues. He also spoke about taking the global peace summit in regard to Ukraine forward. And I would say, if I were to sum up really what was a fairly long and detailed discussion. One, it revolved around to some extent the military situation, on the medium-term concerns like food and energy, and most of all on conceivable pathways to peace and conflict resolution. I would say, I'm sure the Ukrainian side will do its own briefing, but in fairness, I would sort of sum up their position as saying that they clearly wanted a continued involvement of India with the Global Peace Summit. There was also a discussion about what could be effective ways of taking these discussions forward, not necessarily within the format of the summit. There are obviously multiple possibilities here and multiple views about those possibilities. So what I can say is that it was a very detailed, a very open, in many ways a very constructive discussion. And if there is any further development in that regard, we will obviously keep you all informed. With regard to other issues, I think the best that I would do, because we have a paucity of time, would be to refer you to the joint statement. I'm summing it up very succinctly. I'm not touching all points, but in the joint statement, I want to emphasize that the Prime Minister and the President reiterated their readiness to further cooperation in upholding principles of international law, including the UN Charter, such as respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of states. As I said, they spoke about the summit on peace in Ukraine. The last meeting was in June of 2024. In terms of our own positions, I think I read out for you that particular paragraph. I would say, in addition to that, there are references in the joint statement to our bilateral cooperation, to trade, to commerce, to education. We signed 4 agreements today. One was in regard to community development projects in Ukraine. One was in regard to drug control standards and harmonization. One was on cultural exchange, and the 4th one was agriculture. Finally, let me just say that we have been, in the past, been providing humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. I think 17 consignments so far have been delivered. These are largely in the medical, on the medical side. Cubes which contain medical support equipment, which are very effective, very compact, very deployable in many ways. So these cubes with a total weight of 22 tons were handed over today, along with 10 gensets. So I think this would probably be a fair summary of today's discussions. I'm sure you will have some questions or thoughts. I'd be happy to answer them.
We open the floor now, and please do introduce yourself before you ask the question. So let's start there. Rishikesh.
Hi sir, Rishikesh from Press Trust of India. So we have seen in the past that Ukraine side has made a very strong statement on the issue of India's import, especially on gas, energy or coal. So when today Prime Minister meets with President Zelenskiy, did President urge India to curb its imports from Russia?
Okay. Can I take a few, because I'd like to cover as many people as possible. Vishnu.
Sir, Vishnu Shok from NDTV. Were there any specific proposals made by us, by India, to Ukraine in terms of a possible immediate path towards ending the conflict?
So, question is specific proposals and immediate path.
Specific
Proposals?
towards
And
to peace,
the adjectives in question are specific proposal and immediate path.
Yes, sir.
Right, got it.
You can take one more question.
Yeah, sure, I'll take 3.
Ukrainian President, 1+1 media. I have 2 questions. The first question is, India didn't position itself as a negotiator between Ukraine and Russia. However, Bloomberg reports
Our screens right now are visuals of the delegation level talks that were led by Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky. Exchange of documents. Documents were exchanged between the two sides. A total of 4 documents were signed between the two sides. Today, after the delegation level talks, they are the agreement between the government of India and the government of Ukraine on cooperation in the field of agriculture and food industry. The other was a MOU between Central Drugs Standard Control Organization of the Ministry of Health of India and between the State Service of Ukraine on medicines and drugs control, on cooperation in the field of medical products regulation, so basically on drugs. Then there was a MOU between the two sides regarding Indian humanitarian grant assistance for implementation of the high impact community development projects in Ukraine. And then the fourth was on it was between the culture ministries of the two on cooperation on the areas of culture for the years 2024 to 2028. So these 4 documents that were signed, essentially looking at expanding mutually beneficial relations. These are, of course, these documents were signed after the delegation level talks led by the two principals, in which, of course, External Affairs Minister, the National Security Advisor, and the Foreign Secretary were present from the Indian side, along with other officials. And President Zelensky had his delegation, including ministers from his delegation. So these MOUs expand the mutually beneficial cooperation in fields of agriculture and food industry by promoting ties in the areas of information exchange, joint scientific research, exchange of experience, cooperation in agriculture research, creation of joint working groups. The other MOU envisages cooperation on medical products, including regulation, improvement of safety and quality aspects, mainly through information exchange, capacity building, workshops, training and exchanges of visits. The other MOU creates a framework for India to provide grant assistance for community development projects in Ukraine. The projects under this will be undertaken in partnership between the governments of Ukraine and India for the people of Ukraine. And the fourth document aims to strengthen cultural cooperation between India and Ukraine, including the promotion of cultural exchanges and cooperations in the fields of theatre, music, fine arts, literature, library and museum affairs, as well as protection and promotion of tangible and intangible cultural heritage. So post-bilateral talks, India and Ukraine also held delegation-level talks of the visuals that we are beaming to you on your screens right now. These talks took place a little while back. In fact, the meeting between Prime Minister and the President Zelensky is still on, as the External Affairs Minister was saying. Both leaders held a one-on-one meeting where they held discussions on several issues. Ukraine, as I was telling you, that 4 documents or MOUs or agreements in the field of agriculture and food industry, cooperation in the field of medical product regulation, Indian humanitarian grant assistance for high-impact community development projects in Ukraine by Indian funding, and cooperation in the field of culture were signed. And let me go back to my colleague Jessica Taneja, who joins us for more on that story from our Delhi newsroom. Jessica, so now we know that 4 agreements were signed, delegation level talks were held. The External Affairs Minister just concluded a press conference. What would you say was achieved during this short but impact-oriented visit of Prime Minister Modi to Kyiv?
Well, you heard the press statement from External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar say a short while ago that a lot of focus was on the current conflict that has gripped the entire continent for the time being. And with that, of course, it was understood that there was going to be a possibility of facilitating a conflict resolution when it comes to a situation like this. And India would want to play a significant role, if not as a mediator, but definitely as an important player that could help bring about peace in the region. Given that particular aspect in mind, of course, the bilateral exchanges, as you pointed out, the 4 crucial MOUs signed between the 2 countries, and high impact community development projects was on the agenda, and something that was expected as well, on the expected lines as well. But particularly post-war construction efforts, that is what India wanted to also emphasize on when it comes to this particular visit, because of the various kinds of help that India has given in the past. You'd recall the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also pointed out that so far 17 consignments have been sent from the Indian side, which includes medicines as well as other essential supplies like tents, and that is further being ramped up. So of course India has provided resistance time and again, but also focusing on the key aspects of how it sees this particular conflict to end in the near future.
Okay, the External Affairs Minister said that the principals are tasked the 2 ministers, that's Minister Jaishankar and Minister Koleba, to revive the Intergovernmental Commission, and he said that we could probably have a meeting by the end of this year. Give us a sense of how the Commission, what would the Commission try and achieve?
Well, at this point, of course, there's a lot to achieve between the 2. Resumption of trade from where it had been impacted pre-pandemic times, and then, of course, post-pandemic and after the conflict, it nearly took a hit to an effect that where this would be important in terms of even when the post-war construction efforts are beginning to take place, as and when hopefully a resolution to this conflict is found, India would be a key player. And in that aspect, of course, those consultations will be important, and not just focusing on this particular part of the relationship. Beyond that as well, India has shown that it, and in the past as well, and as it moves into the future with its idea of multipolarity and engaging in various multilateral institutions, it would want to continue to diversify its trade ties and not restrict it to various partners.
Okay, also Jessica, give us a sense of, when it came down to, we know what Prime Minister told President Putin when he was visiting Moscow on the conflict. What exactly did Prime Minister Modi tell President Zelensky on his views on the conflict, and was ways to discuss, ways to end it discussed between the 2 sides?
Well, India stands, as you've heard the Prime Minister, at various multilateral forums in the past as well, beginning with the fact that this is not an era of war, where he was seated right next to Vladimir Putin, and that made quite a statement in the past. And from there onwards, India has made it a point that it does not want to be in a position where it has to take certain sides, and it would want a peaceful resolution of this conflict, be it when the 2 sides are together when it comes to a possible peace plan. Well, India is not presenting a peace plan of its own, but it would definitely support one if that brings both the sides on the same, bring both of them on the same side of the table, and perhaps that is where the conversation begins. But from the current situation that we see right now in the war theater, it doesn't seem to be that this particular resolution would be found anytime soon, with the Ukrainian side now claiming territory in the Kursk region, and the Russian occupation continues in eastern Ukraine. This particular battle rages, but it's a matter of time where a lot of countries in the West, as you see, have exhausted their patience for this entire war theater. You've seen that how the supplies have been marginally cut by countries like Germany, and of course other countries and other European countries also mulling over how this needs to be de-escalated, and rather than making it an opportunity for further exploitation, where this could of course hamper the security, the larger security architecture of the region.
Okay, Jessica, finally, a lot was being expected from this short but a very power-packed visit of Prime Minister Modi, because he had enough on his plate. Would you say that the mission of of peace that he took to Ukraine, in your analysis, would have some impact on the way both sides look at the conflict? Because as I understand, Russia hasn't reacted yet to Prime Minister Modi's visit to Kyiv.
Right, and we haven't heard as to what the reaction from the Russian side so far is, but when it comes to the kind of messaging that India has given, it has of course made it a point that it doesn't create any moments which cause sort of a stir in its diplomatic relationships. And of course it will be careful in a sense where to be able to balance its ties. But so far the Russian side has maintained silence on it, but we can expect something later in the day as when the Prime Minister departs. But so far it seems that nothing morbid has come from the Russian side. But at this point, while the world watches where this visit was crucial, it came 6 weeks after he visited Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Although this visit is not in continuance of that, it is India's independent policy thinking and policy framework as to how it approaches its bilateral relationships with various countries, despite the geopolitical climate that surrounds the world right now.
All right, it will be interesting to see how Russia reacts to it, because given the sharp reaction that came from President Zelensky when Prime Minister Modi was in Moscow, and also from the West. We leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much, Jessica Taneja. And moving on, India is commemorating its first ever National Space Day on August 23rd, marking historic achievement with the successful landing of ISRO's Vikram lander from Chandrayaan-3 on this day last year.
3, 2, 1, 0.
August 23rd, 2023, a day that etched India's name in the annals of space history. On this momentous day, India became the fourth nation to successfully land on the moon and the first to explore its mysterious southern polar region. To honor this remarkable achievement, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi declared August 23rd as National Space Day. President Draupadi Murmu attended the celebrations of National Space Day in New Delhi with a focused theme, Touching Lives While Touching the Moon, India's Space Saga.
स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन ने मनुष्यों की क्षमताओं को बढ़ाया है, मानव की कल्पना को यथार्थ में बदला है, ब्रह्मांड के रहस्यों से पर्दा उठाया है। स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन रोमांचकारी होने के साथ साथ एक चुनौती भरा कार्य भी है। इसमें अनेक समस्याएं आती हैं। इन समस्याओं के समाधान के लिए किए जाने वाले अनुसंधान विज्ञान के विकास को गति देती है और मानव जीवन को बेहतर बनाती है।
President Murmu hailed the achievements of ISRO and initiatives launched by government for startups in the space sector. She also congratulated ISRO for its upcoming Gaganyaan mission.
ISRO भारत का अंतरिक्ष स्टेशन स्थापित करने की दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहा है। मैं गगनयान मिशन की भी उत्सुकता से प्रतीक्षा कर रही हूं, जिसमें भारतीय अंतरिक्ष टीम को अंतरिक्ष में ले जाया जाएगा। मुझे विश्वास है कि इन सभी मिशन के फलस्वरूप ऐसे परिणाम सामने आएंगे जिनसे देश सामाजिक, आर्थिक एवं वैज्ञानिक रूप से लाभान्वित होंगे।
The success of Chandrayaan-3 has propelled India onto the global stage as a key player in space exploration. Union Minister Jitendra Singh said that India's space sector has put India at the front in the private sector.
And the world never expected that we would be able to achieve this feat, because our journey in space was just about 55 years long. ISRO was born in the year 1969, the year which is remembered for the first human being having landed on the surface of Moon. Within 50 years, just about half a century, we became the first to have landed on the south pole of Moon before anybody else could do.
With fresh investments and growing collaborations with private partners, India's space sector has taken a quantum leap, paving the way for future discoveries and innovations. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
And ISRO scientists shared their experiences of interacting with Prime Minister Modi during Chandrayaan-2 and Chandrayaan-3 missions. Dr. B.N. Ramakrishna highlighted the Prime Minister's excitement while celebrating the mission's success. And
our Honorable Prime Minister waved the flag and continuously he clapped, and the entire control center was a big area of joy, I can say. Everyone was clapping and shouting. It was a very nice thing. He told that India has achieved this feat not only for India, to the entire human community. He said this achievement is not just for our nation, it is for the entire world.
And while sharing the joy of accomplishment, Dr. Pavitra Shinde described how the Prime Minister highlighted women's contribution in space and encouraged scientists to inspire the youth.
So it was a moment of joy, you know, it was some kind of a special joy, I can say, and that I could relate with the PM. He also experienced the same, and he told it's something which is very rare. And then he congratulated the entire scientific community, ISRO community, and then he applauded our effort. He wants to highlight the contribution of the women in this particular field, the space field. His encouragement, especially for the younger generation, especially schools and colleges, he urged us, like especially the ISRO scientists, to inspire them, to guide them, share our experience.
And on National Space Day, DD India correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya spoke with Awais Ahmed, the CEO of Pixel, an Indian startup developing satellites with hyperspectral sensors that capture data across broader electromagnetic spectrum than standard space sensors. Let's listen in.
Pixel is one of India's company which is working on such kind of a cutting edge technology to provide that impetus to India and India's Air Force, India's defense forces, to give them that edge. I have with me Mr. Ahmed, sir. You are the CEO of the Pixel company. Tell us exactly how this is different from any other run-of-the-mill satellites.
When we started in 2019, there were obviously quite a few satellites up in space that companies, organizations had launched. But when you look at the Earth from those satellites, let's say an agricultural field, you can identify that it's a farm versus a building versus something else. But if you want to identify soil nutrient contents, if you want to identify crop infestations or pest diseases, those are invisible to those satellites. So you needed to build a hyperspectral camera and therefore a hyperspectral satellite that could help us see those things. One, for example, if you wanted to look at greenhouse gas emissions or leaks from oil and gas pipelines, those are again invisible to human eyes but also to cameras up there in space. So to be able to look at that level of difference between a normal satellite in space today versus hyperspectral, that's what we decided that we would build. We're building the world's first and in the process the highest resolution hyperspectral satellites that will go up. So 3 have already been launched to space, the first of which was India's first ever private commercial satellite, and then we are following it up with 6 more in the next few months.
And India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is on a 4-day visit to Washington DC. He interacted with the Indian community there and interacting with the Indian diaspora. Rajnath Singh expressed joy to see how the Indian community continues to cherish and uphold the cultural values and maintain their connection with their roots. During the minister's visit to Washington, D.C., India and the U.S. signed the Security of Supplies Arrangement document and a MOU regarding the assignment of liaison officers. The MOU regarding the assignment of liaison officers was signed by Vishwesh Negi, Joint Secretary International Cooperation, and India's Ministry of Defence, and Dr. Eli Ratner, the Assistant Secretary of State for Defence for Indo-Pacific and Security Affairs. A member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Shamika Ravi, has said that the last 10 years have been economically remarkable for the poorest 20% of the Indian population. In a post on X, Shamika Ravi shared the state-wise data along with a tweet and said that in financial year 12, 6% among the poorest 20% of the Indian population owned a vehicle, and this has increased to 40% by financial year 23. The data showed that vehicle ownership among the bottom 20% of the Indian households is rising the most in Punjab. Amongst the state's poorest rural households, it increased from 15.5% to 62.5%. Among Punjab's poorest urban households, the number has risen from 14% to 65.7%. And still to come on DD India News Hour, the US envoy tells the United Nations that Gaza ceasefire deal is now in sight. Kamala Harris accepts the Democratic Party's nomination for the US presidential election, vows to fight for America's future, says she misses her tough and courageous mother, Shyamala Gopalan, every day.
Double Olympic medalist Manu Bhaker is with us. You have achieved something which has never happened before. Tell us, how big are these medals for you?
The value of the medal, I mean, coming from Tokyo, definitely it means a big deal for me.
Tell us the role of the government also, Manu.
Khelo India and top schemes are good.
You also met Prime Minister Narendra Modi after you won the medals. Must have been a proud feeling to meet him.
So I've met him a couple of times and it's always inspiring. It always motivates us.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Amrit Pal Singh. Updates now from the Israel-Hamas conflict. Hostage and ceasefire talks are expected to pick up again over coming days in Cairo as mediators look for a way to bridge gaps between Israel and Hamas after more than 10 months of fighting in Gaza. It comes as hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah are escalating amid fears of a wider regional spillover. DD India's Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Well, the pressure on both Israel and Hamas to come to an agreement, come to a ceasefire.
So these are again visuals coming in from Kyiv, where Prime Minister Modi and President Zelenskiy are meeting. This is the Indian consignment of assistance to Ukraine. Okay, so this is part of the medicines given under the Ayurogya Maitri initiative. So these medicines they save lives in times of disaster anywhere, and you can see President Zelensky thanking Prime Minister with a warm hug for this under the Arogya Maitri Cube, a portable hospital with necessary facilities are ready at the disaster site within 10 to 50 minutes, in which 200 people can be treated for about 72 hours. And this is what you see. This is the example of the cube. Various parts of the indigenous portable emergency hospital can be transported to the disaster site by helicopter or plane. So India, under its Arogya Maitri initiative, has provided these cubes which contains, of course, required medical assistance, equipment, medicines, and the portable tents which can be converted into hospitals. These that you see on your screen, out of the 17 consignments of aid, a few consignments did contain these portable hospitals, which are very important, especially in times of war and shelling, where hospitals may be destroyed in the shelling, and these portable hospitals come handy. You can quickly set them up, within, as I said, from a gap of 10 to 50 minutes, and perform necessary medical procedures to help people to save their lives in times of crisis. This is equipped with, of course, you can't do extensive surgeries here, but it is equipped with basic facilities that can provide people first aid, in fact go beyond first aid to provide extensive aid when people are hurt due to shelling or burns, bleeding, or even devastation of buildings. These are generally used in times of disaster, which could include natural disasters like earthquakes, etc., or man-made disaster like the war. So these visuals we are beaming to you from Kyiv, where Prime Minister Modi and President Zelenskiy thanking Prime Minister Modi for this relief consignment that was sent under Arogya Maitri. And this was basically during the Prime Minister's visit. This was a presentation on the Bhisham Cube, or the Arogya Maitri Bhisham Cube. Cube is basically that a portable hospital that you will see that we've been playing in a loop on your screens. It's basically like a tent. You can set it up. It has basic medical facilities, instruments, medicines, and it's a revolutionary mobile hospital which is equipped with cutting-edge technology developed by the GOI, or the Government of India, as part of Project Bhisham. Okay, so the Bharat Health Initiative for Sahyog, meaning cooperation, Hita, meaning welfare, Hit, meaning welfare, and Maitri, meaning friendship. The world's first portable hospital, Arogya Maitri Aid Cube, is designed to provide essential healthcare services in disaster-struck areas and emergencies, and can treat up to 200 casualties for about as long as 72 hours. It's equipped with medical essentials, innovative tools, artificial intelligence to enhance disaster response and medical support. In case of Ukraine, it comes a lot handy when there is shelling, when there is destruction, or there is arty fire, etc., or bombardment. The cube makes it easy. It's easy to transport. Humans can carry it themselves or on a cycle. It can be dropped through drones. AI and data analytics help with coordination, monitoring, and management of the medical services in the field. Okay, so all right, Prime Minister Modi with.
लेकिन जब आज मैं उन बालकों की स्मृति में बनाए हुए म्यूजियम को आपके साथ जाकर के अपने श्रद्धा सुमन अर्पित कर रहा था, तो मेरा मन भर आया था, दिल को गहरी चोट पहुंची थी। और मुझे लगता है कि युद्ध की सबसे पहली कैजुअलिटी किसकी होती है, तो निर्दोष बालकों की होती है, और वो बहुत दर्दनाक होता है। किसी भी सुसंस्कृत समाज में
जो मानवीय मूल्यों में विश्वास करते हैं उनके लिए है, और जो एक संवेदनशील व्यक्ति होते हैं उनके लिए है। इस प्रकार की घटनाएं कतई स्वीकार नहीं हो सकती हैं। दुनिया में मानवीय मूल्यों में विश्वास करने वाला कोई भी व्यक्ति इसको स्वीकार नहीं कर सकता है। एक्सेलेंसी, इस दर्दनाक परिस्थितियों के बीच भी आपने जिस गर्मजोश से मेरा और मेरे डेलीगेशन का स्वागत किया, इसके लिए मैं हृदय से आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। एक्सेलेंसी, आज का दिवस भारत और यूक्रेन के संबंधों के लिए एक बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक दिवस है, क्योंकि भारत का प्रधानमंत्री आज पहली बार यूक्रेन की धरती पर आ रहा है। यह अपने आप में एक ऐतिहासिक घटना है। कल आपका नेशनल डे है। ये बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण दिवस है। मेरी तरफ से 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की तरफ से मैं आपके नेशनल डे पर अनेक अनेक शुभकामनाएं देता हूं, और मैं कामना करता हूं शांति के लिए, सुख और समृद्धि के लिए। एक्सेलेंसी, 2021 में ग्लासगो में मिले थे, और पहली ही मुलाकात में एक गहरी मित्रता का अनुभव कर रहे थे, और तब आपने मुझे यूक्रेन आने के लिए बहुत ही आग्रह से निमंत्रण दिया था। लेकिन मैं कल्पना नहीं कर सकता हूं कि मुझे ऐसी परिस्थिति में यूक्रेन आने की नौबत आएगी। एक्सेलेंसी, हमारे द्विपक्षीय संबंधों में ऐसी विपरीत कालखंड में भी प्रगति हो रही है, और मैं कह सकता हूं कि ऐसे तनावपूर्ण वातावरण में ये प्रगति हम दोनों देशों की मैच्योरिटी को प्रतिबिंबित करती है। एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आज बड़े आदरपूर्वक मेरी उस भावना को व्यक्त करना चाहता हूं कि जब युद्ध के प्रारंभिक दिन थे, भारत के हजारों बच्चे जो यहाँ शिक्षा के लिए आए थे, पढ़ने के लिए आए थे, वो उस युद्ध के कारण फंसे हुए थे। उनको बाहर निकालने में आपने जो मदद की और जिस संवेदनशीलता के साथ हमारी चिंताओं को आपने समझा और सुलझाने के लिए भरसक प्रयास किया, इसके लिए मेरी तरफ से, मेरे देश के 140 करोड़ नागरिकों की तरफ से, और उस संकट की घड़ी से निकल करके आए हुए उन बच्चों के, उनके परिवारजनों की तरफ से आपका आज मैं हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। एक्सेलेंसी, आप भी भली बात जानते हैं और पूरा विश्व भी जानता है कि युद्ध के समय हमने 2 प्रकार की भूमिकाओं का रास्ता अपनाया, और उस भूमिका को निभाने का हमने भरपूर प्रयास किया है। हमारी पहली भूमिका रही है मानवीय दृष्टिकोण की। ऐसे संकट की घड़ी में बहुत सारी रिक्वायरमेंट रहती है, जिन रिक्वायरमेंट को पूरा करने के लिए भारत ने हो सका उतना एक मानवीय दृष्टिकोण को केंद्र में रखते हुए पूरा करने का प्रयास किया है। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि मानवीय दृष्टिकोण से भी जिस प्रकार की मदद की आवश्यकता होगी, भारत हमेशा हमेशा आपके साथ खड़ा रहेगा और 2 कदम आगे चलेगा। एक्सेलेंसी, हमने जो दूसरा मार्ग चुना, वो दूसरा मार्ग है युद्ध से दूर रहने का। हम बहुत ही कन्विक्शन के साथ युद्ध से दूर रहे हैं, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि हम तटस्थ थे, हम न्यूट्रल नहीं थे। हम पहले दिन से ही पक्षकार रहे हैं और हमारा पक्ष है शांति का। हम बुद्ध की धरती से आते हैं जहां युद्ध को कोई स्थान नहीं होता है। हम महात्मा गांधी की धरती से आते हैं जिसने पूरे विश्व को शांति का संदेश दिया है। एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आज जब यूक्रेन आया हूं तब मैं 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की भावना को लेकर के आया हूं और 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की भावना मानवता से प्रेरित है और मैं आज यूक्रेन की धरती पर शांति का संदेश लेकर के आया। एक्सेलेंसी, यहां से पहले मैंने ग्लोबल साउथ की कॉन्फ्रेंस की, करीब 120 देश के लोग थे। मैं उनकी तरफ से भी शांति का संदेश लेकर के आया। एक्सेलेंसी, आप भली भांति जानते हैं, यूक्रेन के लोग भी भली भांति जानते हैं कि शांति के हर प्रयास में भारत का सक्रिय योगदान रहा है और आप भली भांति जानते हैं कि हमारा अप्रोच पीपल सेंट्रिक रहा है और मैं आपको भी और पूरे विश्व समुदाय को विश्वास दिलाना चाहता हूं और वो भारत का कमिटमेंट है और हम स्पष्ट मानते हैं कि संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता का सम्मान हमारे लिए सर्वोपरि है। हम उसका समर्थन करते हैं। कुछ समय पहले समरकंद में जब राष्ट्रपति पुतिन से मिला तब मीडिया के सामने आंख से आंख मिला करके मैंने उनको कहा था कि ये युद्ध का समय नहीं है। मैं पिछले दिनों रशिया के मुलाकात के लिए गया था, वहां भी मैंने साफ साफ शब्दों में अपनी बात कही है कि किसी भी समस्या का समाधान रणभूमि में कभी भी नहीं होता है। समाधान का रास्ता बातचीत से ही निकलता है, डायलॉग से निकलता है, डिप्लोमेसी से निकलता है और हमने बिना समय गंवाए उस दिशा में आगे बढ़ना चाहिए। दोनों पक्षों को साथ बैठ करके इस संकट की घड़ी से बाहर निकलने के रास्ते तलाशने होंगे। एक्सेलेंसी, आज हम जब रूबरू मिल रहे हैं तब मैं यूक्रेन की धरती पर और आप जब मैं बच्चों की शहादत को उस जगह को देख कर आया और मेरा मन भरा हुआ है, तब मैं आज आपसे शांति की ओर आगे बढ़ने के मार्ग पर विशेष रूप से चर्चा करना चाहूँगा। एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाना चाहता हूँ कि शांति के हर प्रयास में भारत अपनी सक्रिय भूमिका निभाने के लिए तैयार है। व्यक्तिगत रूप से मैं भी अगर इसमें कोई योगदान कर सकता हूँ तो मैं जरूर करना चाहूँगा। एक मित्र के रूप में मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूँ। एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आज जब आया हूँ पर नेशनल डे है, मैं चाहूँगा कि हम सब जल्दी से जल्दी शांति के सूरज को उगता हुआ देखें। मेरी तरफ से शांति के हर प्रयास में सक्रिय योगदान की भूमिका के साथ आपके स्वागत सत्कार के लिए मैं हृदय से आपका बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ।
So that was Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking to President Zelensky in a statement in his talk on public talk on with President Zelensky. He told President Zelensky that I today when I visited the Martyrology Exposition Museum, I could feel the pain. He said that in any civilized society such sort of an activity is completely unacceptable. He said, I was touched, I was agitated, I was pained, and in the midst of these circumstances, I thank you for welcoming me and my delegation here in Ukraine. He said this is a historic visit, as this is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine. He also congratulated President Zelensky on the National Day of Ukraine. Tomorrow is the National Day of Ukraine. And he said when we he said, I still remember when we met for the first time personally in 2021 in Glasgow. I had immediately struck a deep friendship with you, and I had taken we had taken a mutual liking for each other. It was then you had invited me to come and visit Ukraine. Little did I know then that I shall be visiting Ukraine under such circumstances, referring to the war. He said that it speaks of the maturity of the relationship between the two countries, that the mutual or the bilateral relationship is making progress even in these trying times. He said he also thanked President Zelensky for helping Indian students who were studying in Ukraine. Thanking the Indian students while studying, who were studying in the at the time of war, when the war broke out. He thanked for allowing them and helping them leave Ukraine. He said, I thank you for myself, on my behalf, on behalf of 1.4 billion Indians, and also the parents of those who could safely leave Ukraine when the war broke out. He spoke about the approaches to the war. He said there are, India has taken two approaches to the war. One, primarily a humanitarian approach, and he said that this sort of a humanitarian approach guided our assistance efforts, and he assured President Zelensky that he will continue to stand by Ukraine and keep providing such humanitarian assistance. Second, he said our approach was to stay away from war. But very interestingly, he said we were accused of being neutral in the war. He said we were not neutral. We took sides. India did take sides. This is what Prime Minister Modi told President Zelensky. He said we were on the side of peace. He said, I come from the land of Buddha. I come from the land of Gandhi. I bring a message of peace. And I bring this message of peace not just from India, not just from the 1.4 billion Indians that I represent as the head of their government, but I bring a message of peace also from the entire global south. He said, we've adopted a people-centric approach. We support your government. We support your country. We clearly support you when it comes to sovereignty and maintaining sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said force should not be allowed to change that anywhere in the world. He said, I told that exactly to President Putin, looking him in the eye when I met him, saying this is not an era of war. He said, when I recently met him, I told him that differences cannot be resolved, solutions cannot be found on the battlefield. They have to be found through dialogue and diplomacy. He said, I urge you to walk the same path of peace. So primarily saying that as I urged President Putin, I urge you to walk the path of peace, and India will continue to support you as you walk this path of peace. India will continue its cooperation. He said, I personally, if I can do anything to play a part to bring about peace, I'm ready for that. And that's what Prime Minister Narendra Modi told President Zelensky when he met him one-on-one, and that was a public utterance. My colleague Jessica Taneja joins me with more from the newsroom. Jessica, we heard the Prime Minister speak to President Zelensky. What, according to you, were the salient points of what he said, what he told President Zelensky? You were there in Russia when he was speaking to President Putin.
Right, and this address, of course, has put out the message very clear from the Indian Prime Minister, who said that peace is the way forward, and as he has mentioned, those particular statements in various previous multilateral forums, as well as his personal engagements in the past, where India wants to put forth the idea of dialogue and diplomacy, and of course find a peaceful resolution. If there is a peace plan in place, India would help facilitate that and of course support it, but of course that would have both sides on the table. But with the Prime Minister's address saying that we are on the side of peace, something that the Prime Minister feels will resonate with the community at large, especially with the West as well at this point. As you see, the war still rages on. The area is not as peaceful as we'd imagined, and the continuous halt of various supplies, also sort of disrupting supply chains, which it has in the past as well, and nothing particularly has changed since then. And since 2022 in February, we're now in almost ending in August 2024. It still continues while both the sides are engaged, particularly when it comes to an incursion on either side of the territory. So no resolution in sight, but the Prime Minister's message is clear that India stands on the side of peace, and that is what it will continue to propagate in the future as well.
Absolutely, Okay, all right, Jessica, also, he said that when he visited that museum today where the Martyrology exposition is being held, he felt the pain. He said there is no place for this sort of destruction, for this kind of activity in any civilized society. He said, this is absolutely unacceptable to anybody who has an iota of sensitivity. What was the messaging the Prime Minister was trying to do?
Well, the emphasis on the lives of the children lost is certainly significant and signals the fact that India's deep concerns over the violation of human rights in the region that have been witnessed in the recent past, with various human rights agencies also probing and pulling out various facts from the ground, saying that there is a desperate need to support children who are unable to go to school after war-ravaged, a war-torn country that has potentially seen most of its infrastructure damaged at this point, where children continue to be in their homes. And you're looking at Kyiv right now, which is nearing winter, and that could perhaps be a very difficult time as well. With the focus on the war at this point and how it's proceeding, it doesn't seem to be looking towards the end of conflict. But then again, if there is a peace plan in place which could facilitate some movement or some discussion between the two, that would be certainly an acceptable solution to the rest of the world as well. But how acceptable is it to the two sides that are currently engaged in a fierce battle on either side of each of the country's territories is something which the world watches very closely. And children, unfortunately, and women, of course, the collateral damage in this entire war that continues to not just affect geopolitics, but also the entire security architecture of the region.
Absolutely, and my reading, Jessica, to add to what you just said, I thought that with the Prime Minister, making that public utterance to President Zelensky was also an emotional appeal to the warring parties, to the players involved in this conflict, that if not for the sake of reason, but for the sake of your children, for the sake of humanity, for sake of loss of innocent lives, stop this war now. I think that was, apart from what you said, was the messaging that Prime Minister was trying to do. Appeal to the voice, be the voice of reason, appeal to reason, but appeal to human emotion, saying that this is where we've come, that we've raised, that your children are dying and the world feels that pain. He also talked, Jessica, about bringing a message of peace, of course, from the land of Gandhi and the land of Buddha. But he said it's a message of peace from the entire global South. What was he trying to convey to President Zelensky?
Well, certainly it's also in India's interest to have a stable international order where trade ties continue, general security architecture remains unthreatened, and that perhaps also lies, and that these are the kind of concerns that India has also had in the past, but not spelt out in more ways than one. But with this visit, if you heard what the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also stressed upon, is the fact that this conflict has not helped in any way from the time it started to the time it is now, where we're seeing that Ukrainians, of course, also claiming territory in Russia. This doesn't seem to be ending at all. So in that, the messaging that continues to emphasize and focus on a conflict resolution was something that Indian side wanted to sort of, leave with, and that message perhaps should resonate, because with India's emerging, power and its global presence, and especially Prime Minister's relationship with various other leaders in the world, could bring about some kind of stable structure, so to say. And if you'd see, Amrit, it's important to point out that the Prime Minister is one of the few leaders who visited Ukraine after it was invaded by Russia. Previously, you saw the South African leader there, you saw the Indonesian leader there, but of course, apart from being a first visit of any Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine, this certainly is significant in the current geopolitical setup as well.
Absolutely. Jessica, we'll leave it there. Many thanks for joining us for the moment. And to continue on the story, India continues to provide medical assistance to Ukraine. 17 consignments have been sent. The Prime Minister also referred to that in his talks with President Zelensky. India gifted an indigenous portable hospital, Bhisham Cube, and other medical equipment under the Arogya Maitri scheme of India. President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi looked at this portable hospital which saves lives in times of disaster. Anywhere, it could be a natural disaster, in this case a man-made disaster, that's war, could be used under circumstances of shelling, bombardment, etc. under the Arogya Maitri Cube. This portable hospital with necessary medical facilities is ready at the disaster site within 10 to 15 minutes, in which about 200 people can be treated for about 72 hours. This especially comes handy when, say during shelling, hospitals are destroyed, medical facilities are destroyed. Various parts of this indigenous portable emergency hospital, which can be transported to disaster sites by helicopters, planes, even using drones, can be actually taken on bicycles, etc. also. So it comes really handy.
Have you thought that an entire hospital can be built from this cube that looks like a matchbox? Yes, this is the world's smallest portable emergency hospital built by India, which is completely made by indigenous technology. The Bhisham Cube's advanced facilities and skilled medical personnel ensure that the patient receives hospital quality care on site, stabilizing his or her condition. Bharat Health Initiative for Sahyog, Hit and Maitri is tailored to treat up to 200 casualties, emphasizing rapid response and comprehensive care. The Aid Cube is equipped with several innovative tools designed to enhance disaster response and medical support during emergencies. It integrates artificial intelligence or AI and data analytics, facilitates effective coordination, real-time monitoring and efficient management of medical services in the field. The whole unit contains 72 easily transportable components that can be conveniently carried by hand, cycle or even drone, providing unmatched flexibility. In the face of mass casualty incidents or MCIs, where requirements range from basic aid to advanced medical and surgical care, the Aid Cube stands out with its ability to be deployed within an astonishing 12 minutes. This swift deployment capability is crucial as it effectively bridges the crucial time gap from primary care to definitive care, potentially saving numerous lives in the golden hour of emergencies. This hospital can be run completely with the help of solar energy and batteries. Equipped with testing lab, ventilator, X-ray, ultrasound machine, this hospital has everything that a modern hospital should have. Be it a fracture, head injury, bleeding or respiratory problems or the need for just antibiotics and painkillers, this hospital has it all.
ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हम जानें बचाना चाहते हैं क्योंकि सबसे बड़ा हमारा मोटिव है एवरी लाइफ मैटर्स, हर एक जान बहुत कीमती है और हमारी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जानें शुरू के 1 घंटे में चली जाती है जिसे हम गोल्डन आवर बोलते हैं। आप देखेंगे स्टिकरिंग भी करी गई है, स्टिकर्स पे इम्पोर्टेंटली नाम लिखा है, नंबर लिखा है, नंबर ऑफ आइटम्स की क्वांटिटी क्या है और क्या किट है उसके अंदर, तो ये बहुत ज़्यादा यूज़र फ्रेंडली बन जाता है।
There is a QR code on every box of the portable emergency hospital which can be scanned to find out which box contains medicines for which disease and what their expiry date is. Apart from this, they also have RFID tags which can work without the internet. What is locked in which cube is written above, but if the information cannot be read, then it can be found in a minute by scanning with RFID. The hospital has been designed in such a way that even a doctor or a paramedical staff can prepare it. Designed to withstand various conditions, they are robust, waterproof and lightweight, suitable for airdrops and ground transportation. The project plays a crucial role in minimizing the impact of disasters on communities by providing immediate healthcare services, thereby increasing community resilience. The deployment of Arogya Maitri Disaster Management Cube (BSHMs) in Ayodhya for the Pran Pratishta ceremony is a practical example of the project's application, demonstrating India's commitment to integrating modern technology and innovation in public health and disaster management. Bureau Report, DD India.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar addressed the media and summed up what happened today with regard to bilateral talks which Prime Minister had with President Zelenskiy.
In terms of the official discussions, I should say that he held these with President Zelenskiy. This happens to be their 4th meeting. They had met initially in Glasgow in November of 2021, then in Hiroshima in May of 2023, and then most recently in Puglia in Italy in June of 2024. They've also had 7 teleconversations. In the discussion, obviously a significant part of it was devoted to our bilateral relations. There was a discussion about trade, economic issues, defense, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, education. There were a whole lot of issues. You will see much of that reflected in the joint statement. It will be released very shortly. In terms of the...
Prime Minister was in Ukraine. He arrived in Ukraine's capital Kyiv on a day-long visit. It was actually hours-long visit, about 7 hours. The Prime Minister would be leaving Ukraine very soon upon his arrival. He arrived by train from Poland. Upon his arrival, he was received by, of course, the first Deputy Minister there on Rail Force 1. He arrived from the Polish border and, of course, the Indian embassy officials. Later, he was received, extended a warm welcome by the Indian community there. Prime Minister Modi is in Ukraine at the invitation of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. And Prime Minister Modi paid homage to Mahatma Gandhi's statue. Prime Minister underscored the timeless relevance of Mahatma Gandhi's message of peace in building a harmonious society. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky greeted Prime Minister Modi ahead of the talks. The both leaders honored the memory of the Ukrainian children at the Martyrologist exposition in Kyiv. And post the bilateral talks, India and Ukraine also held delegation-level talks. Both leaders held discussions on several issues. India and Ukraine also exchanged agreements in the field of agriculture and food industry, cooperation in the field of medical product regulation, Indian humanitarian grant assistance for high-impact community development projects, and in the field of cultural cooperation. And 4 agreements in total were signed. These talks, it was a 7-hour visit, as I said, a power-packed visit, a short but a power-packed visit. The Prime Minister took an arduous 10-hour train journey to Ukraine from Poland, he visited, as we were saying, in the visit. The moment he arrived, he was received at the railway station. Later, he held delegation-level talks with President Zelenskiy, and agreements in 4 agreements in these various fields were signed. And that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on your screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Amritpal Singh from my entire team in Delhi. Thank you for watching DD India News Hour.